see everybody. I'm Linda Ricci, and I am here and a bit hoarse from talking to so many of you yesterday, so please forgive my voice. A little bit about me. My background is in business and digital strategy, and I've focused on developing and leading the implementation of strategies for companies dealing with emerging technologies. I focused on XR these past couple years because I absolutely love it, and I have for a very long time. And I'm also an artist in this space, as many of you know. So that's a little bit about me. You can read more at lindaricci.com if you are interested in seeing some of my weird VR art, because I really have fun making stuff as well. So on to the subject at hand, AI, digital beings, and the intersection with XR. Now this is only a 20-minute talk, so I mean it is barely glancing the surface, but I'm going to talk about digital beings, why you should care, what they are, because we can't talk about what's going to happen unless we have a baseline. We're going to explore a little bit about artificial intelligence today, a little history on the intersection between digital beings and AI, where we are today with that, and where we're going to be with XR in the mix. I talk about a couple of kind of far out use cases for entertainment, music, sports, relationships, and more, and then have some closing thoughts on the intersection with XR. So my talk builds on David's, which is he talked about what's happening. I'm talking about what's happening out there in the future. And just as a side note, for anyone who is interested, please connect with me afterwards and give me your business card or reach out on LinkedIn, and I will follow up with some links to the companies and the things I talk about if you're interested in seeing that. But before we dive in, I would like to give a shout out to these two. These are two friends of mine. I'd like to call them friends. It's Lorraine Pratt and Jackie Morey, who is not here, I don't think. And Dr. Lorraine Pratt is a leading machine learning and decision intelligence scientist, and Jackie is, of course, the godmother of XR and a pioneer. And I chatted with both of them before this, and they had some wonderful insights, and I just wanted to thank them publicly for their time for that. Conversations with them are always fascinating and thought-provoking, and I just wanted to say thank you to them. So, why should you care about digital beings? Well, it's really quite simple. It's a huge market opportunity. The market size is forecast to be worth roughly $528 billion, that's with a B, in 2030, and is supposed to have a compounded annual growth rate of 46%. So even if that is breathlessly optimistic, you can quarter it, you can have it, whatever number you want to look at, it's still really big. It has an awful lot of economic potential. The key driving factor behind this is that AI-driven digital beings are an opportunity to truly connect and engage with customers in a way that's never been possible before. We already connect emotionally with celebrities, right? We connect with actors and athletes and cartoon characters, and they all have their fans and their fandoms, but that is barely scratching the surface of where this can go. It is not a big leap to see that this is a continuation and an evolution of that. Digital beings can bring meaningful connection to the digital world where empathy and compassion have disappeared from customer interactions, as David was talking about with soul machines. And you can do it with a technology that is infinitely scalable and never sleeps, 24/7. So increasing digital nature of our experience and our shared social experiences, I have such trouble with that phrase, is that we'll all be interacting more in the metaverse in the future, so digital interaction and how we relate to each other is actually only going to increase exponentially. So the opportunity for virtual beings to be there as part of it is also going to grow enormously. According to the Harvard Business Review, emotionally connected customers are proven to be 4 times more loyal to brands and are likely to spend twice as much than customers that are not emotionally connected. So that is a couple of good reasons why you should be interested in this technology and how it progresses. But what exactly is a digital being? I don't know if there's one definition, but this is the one that I go with. This is a digital representation of a physical being, and I don't say human here, I said being, that uses artificial intelligence to interact with us. That digital being could have any aesthetic. It could be a bouncing ball of light that tells you where to go at the AWE virtual showcase. Or it could be a non-player character telling you instructions in Skyrim. It could be a talking hot dog. It could be whatever you want it to be. These are all representations where the personality and behaviors are driven by AI. Ideally, and we're not there yet, they offer natural conversation and as the interaction mode. So verbal and nonverbal cues, including tone of voice and facial expressions. They exist entirely in digital domain, and they interact with us through social media, games, web browsers, virtual environments, augmented reality, anywhere that we interact with and use digital technology. So I did want to talk about this because Jackie and I actually had a long conversation about it. What is not a digital being? Well, an avatar falls under that category. It's an extension of someone, and it has no autonomy. It is literally a digital puppet. So it's cool, and it's definitely fun, and it's a great movie, and I can't wait to see the next one that's coming out. But it is just a shell waiting for someone to inhabit them. Motion capture is also not a digital being, and that's because it's digital motion that is just overlaid onto a human's behavior. And CGI characters, no matter how great they look, are scripted objects that are put together by a team of very talented people, and there's nothing to say in the future that these can't become AI-driven characters, and wouldn't that be fun? But currently they are scripted and highly produced digital representations, and they're very expensive to produce. So let's talk a little bit about where AI really is, because we talk about it a lot, and there's a lot of scary movies about artificial intelligence taking over. But what is it in reality, and how much can we actually do with it today? So a very simplistic definition is that it is a synthetic intelligence that can perform tasks like humans, such as visual perception, learning, and speech recognition, and decision making. As an area of research, it has a lot of branches. When we talk about conversing with computers, that's called natural language processing, and it's one branch of AI. It's what we mean when we talk about being able to have a natural conversation with a digital being. It means they can converse and understand and respond and analyze and potentially generate new thoughts. It's still very, very much in its infancy. Machine learning is the second branch of AI that we think of when we think of intelligent digital beings. It means they don't need a specific and very narrow data set like they do now to operate, but they can self-learn from testing different outcomes and prior experience. Image recognition is the third branch of AI that's particularly relevant to digital humans or digital beings. It gives them the ability to identify objects, which is particularly important if you think about it, because if you're walking through the world with an AI as your partner, it needs to understand your context. It also is critical if we want our digital interaction partners to be able to understand our emotions and read our faces and reflect them back. So we currently have rudimentary artificial intelligence that can do some of these things with differing levels of success. But generally speaking, we have what is called narrow or weak, I like the word narrow better, AI, which is trained and focused to perform specific tasks, like David was talking about, the artificial humans at Soul Machines. It drives most of the AI that surrounds us today. There is some rudimentary learning that does happen, but it's confined to a very narrow data set. And I'll give you an example. Nestle has an AI they call Ruth. It's Ruth the cookie coach. You can talk to her. I did. I threw a couple curveballs at her just to see how she responded. And I threw her off when I asked her if I could put sesame seeds in my cookies. She could not respond to that. It was outside her data set. So as I said, very narrow. And it is getting better, but it is narrow. So nevertheless, we do have AI today, and it is pretty quietly embedded in our lives without us recognizing it. So it detects our email spam. It recognizes an image when you do an image search, but strangely cannot do a CAPTCHA. It makes our cars brake automatically, and it enables voice commands like when we talk to Alexa or Siri. It even helps doctors diagnose skin cancer. And my personal favorite lately is doing the plant identifier app. If none of you have done that, it's genius. Strong AI is the theoretical next generation of artificial intelligence, where a machine would have an intelligence equal to humans. It would have a self-aware consciousness that has the ability to solve problems, learn, and plan for the future. This form, I had to do it, a picture of how, this form of AI has no examples in use today, which isn't to say there aren't people working very hard on it and it isn't going to happen. The best examples are still from science fiction, such as HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey, even though it's 50 years old, still in the future. Typically, this involves talking with natural language with no limits on its knowledge or learning capacity. So it correctly teaches itself, learns, incorporates that learning, and evolves without human intervention. We're still really far away from this. Maybe in our lifetimes, maybe not, but incrementally, we are improving every day. So let's talk about the force multiplier that AI plus digital beings in XR could be. First, a very abbreviated history of digital beings, and they go back farther than I realized until I actually talked to Jackie about this. Eliza was our Eve in the early 60s. It was a natural language processing computer program that was created in the early 1960s by a Joseph Weizenbaum at the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. So she simulated conversation with 250 lines of code by using pattern matching and a substitution method that created the illusion of understanding on the part of the program, but in fact had no AI and no real framework for contextualizing conversation. Now, why do I mention this? What I find the most interesting part of this, and this is really the center of, I think, my presentation, was the quote from Joseph Weizenbaum. And he said, and this is a quote, he was startled to see how quickly and how very deeply people became emotionally involved with the computer and how unequivocally they anthropomorphized it. For me, this is a key insight and one that will ensure the success of digital beings in the future. So as humans, we crave connection and communication, and we anthropomorphize really quickly. Do you remember, I'm sure everybody here does, remember that Boston Dynamics video that went around of the dog? I was amazed on social media how everyone was so outraged when it got kicked. It's a dog that doesn't even have a head, and everybody was so upset about this, right? This is the power of digital beings. Not only are we going to be able to relate to them and quickly forget that they're not actually real, but we're going to form really emotional relationships with them, and depending on the interaction, mutual respect. So for example, I am not befriending a chatbot, but I will become deeply enraged if somebody kicks my dog meat in Fallout. And by the way, we almost named our dog Dog Meat. We thought that was really funny. All right, on that note, let's talk about where we really are with digital beings. So Eliza's grandchildren have come a very, very far way. We have more realistic, purposeful characters, and they certainly look a lot better. They're very specific, purpose digital beings, even though they are still that weak AI that I talked about, and they have heavily sandboxed content in terms of scope. There are a number of areas where they will be currently used for or will be shortly, and to go back to David's amazing presentation right before me, we talked about customer service, where chatbots are being replaced by virtual beings that can converse with customers through either text input or limited conversation. This exists, although it is still really early, and the interaction is severely limited in scope. So companies like Soul Machines and Unique and Didimo are leading the pack. Currently, this is primarily where the focus is. It's the lowest hanging fruit, it's a business model that people understand, and it's a narrow set of data. It's not the sexiest subject, sorry David, but the learnings will fuel many, many other industries. So there's also AI in gaming, right? We have non-player characters that are controlled by the computer. They have a predetermined set of behaviors. They are our instruction guides, our pals, our foes, and more, with autonomous behavior that reacts to our moves, but it's not necessarily the product of true artificial intelligence. More and more games are using AI for non-player characters to make the games more immersive and realistic. Ideally, we'll be able to interact with them as if they were just another player, experiencing the game and making the plots more complex as part of it. We are starting to have digital companionship. Who doesn't love pets? We have, there's 2 companies that I can think of off the top of my head, there's probably more, that are creating AI-driven pets. And they will be able to accompany us as we walk across the digital universe, metaverse. They aren't designed to just be cute. They are infused with personalities and that are individual to them. And their behaviors can change as they learn how we like to interact with them. This screenshot is actually from VR Pets, but there's a thing called the Petaverse that just launched, and it has ambitions to create a cross-platform interoperability for digital pets, so wherever we go in the metaverse, we can take our little pets with us, and that could be dogs, cats, dragons, whatever you want. So, and finally, and this is from Lorraine, it's a bit of a complicated slide, but there's AI is being used in decision modeling and simulation. So she's using sims to model human behavior in situations that would be too dangerous or impossible to recreate in real life, and to solve problems more quickly and cheaply than could be done in real life. So she was telling me about a use case that she actually just finished working on, which included a sim that calculates the optimal number of humans in an office building at one time to minimize the spread of COVID, because buildings are worried about people coming back. So this flowchart was taken from her, which takes into consideration some of the variables that she used. She included particles, airflow, digital beings with AI-driven autonomous behavior, and the building's HVAC and other factors, and she created a sim that modeled thousands of iterations, and ultimately, she helped business owners and designers arrange their offices to be optimally safe for people's returns. So this is not, obviously, a representation of a human or a being, so I'm not sure it would be called a digital being per se, but the behavior that was programmed gave each human in the sim autonomy to behave with free will within the AI's parameters. So this type of sim research could absolutely be used with digital beings in the future. So if you want to check out Lorraine's work, she's quantelia.com. So let's talk about where this might be going, because I think if your frame of reference is, gee, it's cool, Tony the Tiger that can talk, you're not thinking big enough. Consider the impact of easily accessible AR combined with the ability to talk naturally and interact with a digital being in your physical space. This isn't tomorrow, but it's a pretty sure bet that this is where we're going to end up. So entertainment. We have had dead actors resurrected digitally, and this was actually Audrey Hepburn resurrected as a Galaxy chocolate commercial. Still, the AI used it, matched and moved with her face, and they were actresses that had her likeness put over them. It's really just glorified CGI. And we've had actors convincingly de-aged using AI. I mean, I cannot forget Robert De Niro's face, decades younger in The Irishman. Replacing actors is looking increasingly realistic. AI today can do a fair job of mimicking human emotions while reacting to scripts with natural movement. At CES in 2020, I saw Neon's digital humans correctly read text they had never seen before. And they had the correct emotion and the correct intonation. So it's not a huge leap to imagine that AIs that can realistically interpolate emotion could also drive a digital version of an actor. And at that point, an actor's digital twin could literally live on forever. Get ready for Tom Cruise at 100, still doing his own stunts. Now think about that entertainment and what it means when you can interact with it instead of passively watching it. It will move to being interactive theater. That digital clone of Tom Cruise could become your best buddy. You can have drinks with him. You can skydive with him. Your living room can become the set, and you can be sitting in the middle of it. Experience it, and do it with whoever your favorite idol is. So same goes for music, really. ABBA, and I grew up in Europe, so I say ABBA, probably wrong for the US, but literally just held a concert in London last week, and they had digital holograms of themselves, like 50 years younger, I think, and they were performing new music. So imagine a world where dead artists' AI can keep creating music in their style and perform it. Just like Tupac's hologram at Coachella wowed audiences, but it actually took massive human effort to create. So someday AI will be able to run that simulation and without all the technical prowess involved. And then each and every fan can party with that digital twin and sit with them in their living room, next to them, having a private concert of their latest album release that the AI created. So for sports ball as I call it, I'm not a sports fan, imagine being able to play basketball with Michael Jordan in virtual reality, compete against him while the AI drives his performance and bases it on the moves he actually made, but improvises it and then tailors it to your level of expertise. For marketing and advertising, we talk about brand engagement all the time. What if that means that you can actually engage with that brand in 3 dimensions? So there are a number of virtual influencers out there riding the wave of novelty, as far as I'm concerned right now. One of the most hugely followed is one I'd never heard of before called Ludo Magalu. She's in Brazil. She has 30 million followers on social media, and I couldn't believe this. She earned a staggering $552 million in 2019. Makes me want to go start a virtual influencer, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure I'd call them digital beings because she's more of a virtual character. She doesn't interact, and there's no AI to speak of yet. But I don't think it's a huge leap to see how her people who run her are going to infuse her behavior with AI, and pretty soon you will be able to interact with her. And that's catnip to brands. Well, each and every one of those 30 million followers can then chat with her and hang out with her and speak to her in the flesh, so to speak. And then companionship. I love saying since the beginning, my very first talk, I talked about the end of loneliness in virtual reality. And loneliness is a real problem, not just for senior citizens, as everybody thinks. More than 30% of adults suffer from loneliness, and it rises to almost 50% over 65. And loneliness, we are social creatures, affects humans deeply. So it can take a serious physical toll as well. You can actually get sick, cognitive decline, all these things. It's no joke. So Unique is targeting this health issue with digital humans. On their website, they talk about IQ meets EQ. Conversational AI companions offer a friendly, warm interaction. This is from their website, and a new way to deliver dynamic digital customer or patient experiences, ones that connect with people on an emotional level. And it's a very dry way of saying you have somebody to talk to. And there's a story I stumbled on about 2 years ago, and I just love. It's about a woman with Parkinson's, so she has mobility issues. She regularly meets her son in virtual reality. He lives somewhere away, and they dance together, and she has physical mobility again. So that's with avatars, but if you start throwing AI into the mix, you'll be able to dance with anybody. Isn't that a great way to brighten up people's lives? I think it's wonderful. And then finally, sorry, I had to do it, we have a different kind of companionship, digital love. There are a few hundred of these virtual girlfriend apps. Once I started diving into this, I was astonished. A surprising number of people are posting incredibly emotional comments about this stuff, about how wonderful they are. So this includes AR apps like this one, where you can place a digital being in your living room if you like. This one, by the way, is designed by BroLab. Wasn't surprised by that at all. There are over 100K downloads. This is just one app, and there's hundreds of them. So again, not a huge leap to see how this could start filling a lot of emotional voids out there once you actually can start naturally conversing, because right now it's still text input chat, right? And form emotional attachments. So these are only a few examples of how artificial intelligence coupled with digital beings in XR could turn out. All three are rapidly developing industries, and they're converging. So the possibilities are really just starting to unfold. So I have some short takeaways on my thoughts on this. We are truly facing a historic moment in humanity's history. We don't know where this is going to end up, and we are still really in early days. But consider what the impact of easily accessible AR combined with the ability to talk naturally and interact with a digital being in your physical space, what that can bring. Or being able to talk with your own personal Wilson on your private VR island and have him talk back. Consider brand relationships in a world where you can actually play tennis with Serena while she's wearing your company's branded gear. Or learn fencing from D'Artagnan, or science with Albert Einstein. Essentially, and I realize this, what I'm talking about is the holodeck from Star Trek, and that is still really science fiction. We're not there yet, and we might not get there very soon. But slowly and surely, we really are moving there and improving rapidly. So that was my talk. It was nice. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here.
If there's anybody with questions, please go to one of the floor mics or come over here. We'll get your question mic so Linda can answer it and be recorded. The mics are open.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
You had some statistics up there about just feeling confident that people will emotionally connect and not worry so much that it's not real. But there are a lot of executives out there that is the tape in their head. People care, it's not real. People care, it's not real.
I think partially it's generational, although I'm definitely not one of the younger generation. But I think that people I'll just say my age, are concerned with what is real, and I don't think the younger generation cares so much about what is real, because real is to them what they experience, and if it's virtual and digital, it's real,
Right. And is there a place where you'd recommend that people can go to kind of gather information like that, to kind of go, I mean,
What stats on that it's,
maybe it's not stats, but like what you just said, people, it might be generational, or it just might be a mindset of whether or not they care if it's real, because we're putting, it just, like, it sounds like you've done some research on that, or you have a good sense.
I've been talking about it for a long time, and I see evidence that hasn't been scientific. I can find you some and get back to you.
Okay, it was a great talk.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a squishy subject. Use David's squishy term. It's a squishy subject.
Thank you.
But I see the younger generation, and like my nephew's 12, and like trying to convince him that Minecraft is not real and that he can't eat those vegetables. He just does. He's like, it's real to him, And I'm not just using one use case, but I see evidence of that in so many places. That people are very concerned with what is real, and it's like real is what you experience. So if it happens to be digital and immersive, and that's real to you,